In this video I'll be covering the basics of user management for MikroTik RouterOS. We'll be looking at modifying the default user, how to add new users. We'll also look at user groups and access levels, and how to create custom groups with custom settings. If you have a new router, or you've just done a full reset of the router, the only account will be the admin account. The admin account will have a blank password, and it will also belong to the full group. The full group has the maximum permissions of the router. This is very obviously a security risk, and we'll have to modify the admin account in some way to make sure that it is secured. By clicking on System and then selecting Users, I'm able to see a list of users that are currently on the system. You'll see currently the only user there is admin, and the admin has an E next to it. In this case, E means expired, and what's going to happen is, as long as I log in with this admin user without changing the password, I'll continually be prompted to change the password. If your version of RouterOS is version 6.49 or later, and you log in with the blank password, you'll notice the system will immediately prompt you to change your password. In this case, the old password would be blank, and the new password could be anything that you choose. To add a new user, from the System Users menu, I'll click the plus sign to add a new user in. At this point, I can give the user a username, and I can select the level of access. The default levels are read, full, and write. At this point, I'm just going to select the write level. I can then specify a password for the user, make sure that I have confirmed the password, and as an additional form of security, I can click on allowed addresses, and I'm able to specify a range of IPs from which the user may log in. Note that multiple ranges are allowed, and I can of course add in the management IPs for my network. Once I've done that, click on OK, and the new user is added in with the correct user level. User groups are used to customize permissions for various levels of user access. There are three built-in groups, that is read, write, and full. The read group allows you to view the router configuration. You can change your own password. You can run certain test tools such as ping and traceroute and bandwidth test. You're also able to reboot the router and view certain sensitive content such as PPP secrets or hotspot passwords. Write access allows full router config but no user management, i.e. you may not add or remove users or change any other user information. Full or policy write is the full unrestricted access to all router settings. This list details the various permissions that you could apply and the policy that it allows. The local policy allows you to log in locally via either a console cable or using the keyboard and screen in the case of a CHR router. SSH, Telnet, Winbox, Web, API, REST API, and TICAP are all methodologies whereby you can log into the router. So you can grant access to one or more of those services depending on the level of access required. FTP is a policy that grants rights to log in via FTP and to transfer files to and from the router. This is used along with read and write access to control the user access level. Read is a policy that grants read access to the router. All commands that do not alter the router's configuration are allowed. Write is a policy that grants write access to the router's configuration except for user management. It does not allow the user to read the configuration, therefore you'll need to make sure that if you grant write policy, read access is granted in addition to that. Policy is then the full administrative control including all user management rights. Again, this needs to be stacked together with the write and the read policy in order to be effective. Test and sniff allow the user to run all the default test tools such as ping, traceroute, bandwidth test, the wireless scan, the sniffer, the snooper, and various other test commands that are available to us. Reboot simply allows you to reboot the router. Dude is used if the Dude service has been installed on the router, and that will allow remote users to log into the local Dude service. Password grants the user the right to change their own password, but not other passwords. To change other password, you require the policy right. Sensitive allows you to see certain sensitive information. There is a link to the MikroTik wiki that will show you what information that is. And finally, Roamon allows access via router management overlay network, and we'll cover that further in the series. Let's take the example of creating a user that is allowed to SSH into the router, view some of the config, and also run some of the test tools, but is otherwise not allowed to modify the router in any way. I'll start off by clicking on User Groups and clicking Add to add a new group in. I can give the group a name, and then I need to select the relative permissions that are required. In this case, I need SSH access. I'll select that. I also need a minimum of read access to allow the user to log onto the device. And as I mentioned, I want the user to be able to run certain test utilities, so I shall give him the test user access. I can then click on OK, and you'll see that the new user group has been added in. I'll then navigate to Users, click to add a new user in, select the username, specify the group that I've just created. In addition, I can specify allowed addresses if I want to restrict that login, give the user a password, and click OK to finalize that. In this video I've shown you how to set an admin password when first logging onto the router or at any later stage. We've seen how to add new users with user permissions based on the default settings, and we've also seen how to add customized user groups to allow us to choose a customized set of permissions.